The gains are different. There are some things that you experience that you visibly notice. I went from point A to point B. I am more skilled. I am more capable. I'm more skill set, more scholarly, whatever, however you want to call it. You see those big leaps. What you don't see, and what I don't think we celebrate, is we don't celebrate the little things. And through an academic career, to your point, you don't, the day in, the day out, we don't, there's nothing glorious about that, particularly that daily grind. But when you look back over the course of, in your case, getting a degree or graduating or whatever people are studying, all those little things add up to something. And as myself, being an extremely impatient person, I get frustrated with myself in the same capacity because I don't see that. And it's usually not until I've gone down the road far enough that I realize, wow, look at all of these little things. And I realize in such a bigger picture how that has developed.
Empower You podcast is devoted to bringing real-world wisdom and encouragement to our listeners. We discuss a multitude of life principles and the process from an economic, cultural, and societal perspective. We believe that through tough conversations and shared wisdom, we can pave the path and leave a ladder for the future. Subscribe to our channel and let us empower you.
The University of St. Francis Music Technology Bachelor's and Associate's degree programs allow students to focus on the genre and specific area of the music industry that interests them. With concentrations in audio production, audio for video post-production, live sound, music business, and contemporary artist development, there's something for everyone. Here are just a few examples of students' music. Go to sf.edu to learn more.
Welcome to Empower You podcast. My name is Kid Boy Cooper, and I am so glad that you are here. So today we're going to be talking about the differences between skill sets and scholars. We're going to talk about, kind of the differences there. But first, I really want to make sure that I give a really good shout out and a welcome to our title sponsor for this season. This season is all about education. And so our title sponsor for this season is the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That is the school that I went to and graduated with a degree in audio for creative arts. I spent a lot of time on that campus in the culture, not only learning and sharpening my skills, but making valuable lifelong connections that have really enabled me to do some amazing things. And I really just can't stress enough how thankful I am for the experiences that I had at the University of St. Francis, and I want to welcome them as a title sponsor. That means you guys are going to be seeing more of their content. You're going to hear more about the things that they're doing, and in this interview, you're actually going to talk to a really incredible part of their staff and their creative team, and who's going to be our guest for today. So, like I said, we're talking about the differences between having a skill set and being a scholar. It's very, very different things. You might think of them as the same things, but as we break this down, you're going to be like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. So, our guest is the program director for the music technology department, a tone meister. He has like 1,000 different degrees that just reinforce all of the incredible expertise he brings to his role as director of the music technology program. And you may have heard the ads for the University of St. Francis and the music technology program. All of those students reside under his care, his oversight, as he develops these programs that equip students to be able to be really competitive in the work field. So I won't hold us up too much more because I really want to get into this conversation. All right, so I want you all to welcome Mr. Miles Fulwider to our show. Miles, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thanks, Kibwe. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thank you so much for
Good.
being here. I know you're super busy with the students and everybody, but I appreciate you taking some time, bro.
Oh, happy to do it. Happy to have this conversation. So thanks for the invitation.
Awesome. So I would love to know a little bit about what you're doing, and kind of the work that you are involved in your field. Tell us about you just a little bit before we go deep into these questions.
Well, sometimes I don't know that I know what I'm doing. So, but as far as a little bit about me, so as you mentioned here at the top, so I'm program director for the music technology and digital media management programs here at the University of St. Francis. And I have this split personality where part of myself is here working with students and an amazing staff and faculty here that I just love working with, and working with students and talking about all the things that you might do in the professional sector. And then the other part of me works in the professional sector. So I work as a recording engineer, music producer. I work in post-production for sound, for film, for TV, things of that nature. And so I feel like I'm pretty fortunate in the sense that I get to do those things professionally, and then I get to talk about it and work with really creative young minds and students that coincidentally instruct me in many ways as well. And I learn a lot from, which is probably maybe a little selfish, but also a really great to the situation. But that's a little bit about me. So I'm either, in a classroom working with students, or I'm probably making some music or working on a film or something like that.
That's awesome. So you're not only the program director, but you literally go out and do the stuff that you're teaching, right? So you're a product of your own expertise, right? Does that sound right?
No, it's true. It's something where that was always really important to me. I always wanted to be, as I got into education, it was really a matter of trying to find a situation that encouraged that. Because I will be honest, as you know this, where this is on other industries, but the industry that is music and technology and entertainment, it changes so quickly. And I personally feel like I don't feel like I'm equipped to instruct and to demonstrate because of trends and technologies that change so quickly if I'm not actively doing it. So it's definitely a piece that it's part of my soul. It's what I love doing as well. But I don't feel that I would be comfortable in a classroom setting if it wasn't something that I couldn't literally be, well, here's something else that I'm doing, or this is something else that I've learned this week when I was doing this and this. And so I hope that I bring that type of application into my classes.
That's really, really awesome, because I think in some cases, right, and this is not to knock anybody, but I think we can get very, very comfortable telling young people what to do, right? Because you've got this career that you were doing for however long. And so you really start to lose touch with what is interesting and what is dynamic, what is engaging for the students that you might be teaching, because you've kind of calcified in your own experience. And I think it's really amazing that you continually are doing things like, if you guys follow Miles Fulwider on social media, you really are gonna see, like, this guy travels and does everything. There's no telling where he is doing something with audio, video, and I think that is incredible, because as a student, that's the kind of person I wanna work with, right? That's the person I wanna learn from, because I want to be inspired by the people I learn from. And even the other staff at University of St. Francis in the music technology department, they're doing things, and even throughout the campus, they're doing things that are inspiring. And so I feel like if you don't have that to offer your students, your students can only look up to you so much. And so I think it's great that was one of your goals in education, was to be an example more than just an instructor.
Yeah. And it's me following suit. I've had some really great, I talk about this a lot. I've had really great mentors, and I feel like they kind of gave me the roadmap, and really clearly demonstrated how that could be done. And so, in many ways, I feel like I'm just trying to follow in those shoes and present those types of opportunities for students that were granted to me, in various capacities.
That's amazing, man. So what do you think of, when you think about a skill set, right? Because what you have is a skill set that you use quite regularly in your own practice, but then that you also teach, right? And that's what was passed down to you, this servant leader type of model that you then have taken and passed down to your students, which is just incredible. Would you say that, I tend to I'm not super scholarly, okay? I don't believe I'm super scholarly. I don't think I'm unintelligent, but I do possess certain skill sets, and that, for me, I think that has been a driving factor in the opportunities that I've had. And so when I'm listening to you, I'm wondering, what do you define as? Do you feel like your skill set is what has helped you out a lot? Or do you feel like, the model of being a true student of the art of your field rather has been more beneficial for you?
That's an interesting question. When I think of skill set, just to make it really bite-sized, in my mind, I think of a skill set as the capacity to do something. Where it's, I have a skill set. I mow my lawn, and I have the capacity to do that. And again, like I say that because, in a former life, we actually had a landscaping business, and I would say in that field, I definitely had the capacity. I could do the things. I could put in sprinkling systems. I could mow lawns. I had these skill sets to do things. There was an objective. There was something that needed to be accomplished, and I could do those things. And so I look at the idea of a skill set where, kind of going back to what you were saying, I think that we all possess a lot of different types of skill sets. And so for me, the idea is that it really boils down to the capacity to do things. I think where people find themselves in trouble, professionally, as well as opportunities for growth, are particularly in those areas of skill sets. How often have we said, yeah, I can do that, when we don't really know how to do that? In that case, I don't think we have the skill set. We might have the skill set to learn how to do those things and to apply ourselves.
Right.
But essentially, that'll give us that growth opportunity. But simply, that's how I look at what a simple skill set it is. It's the ability, the capacity to do something, whatever that is, whether that's industry related or whatever.
Right. So how would you define being a scholar then?
So I look at that as a bit more of a symbiotic relationship where I think just by nature, we attribute advanced study or things of that nature to scholarly. In the world of academia, scholarly implies extensive research or case studies and development of methodologies and those kinds of things. But, I think that there's, I won't say a breakdown, but I feel like in the nitty gritty of every day that looks a little differently. But what I do think it does is the aspect of being scholarly requires a great, a strong curation of those skill sets that you're able to operate at a more advanced or a deeper level in some things.
Okay.
You know what I mean? No one is going to be a scholar at everything.
Right.
But there are these attributes where the idea of being a scholar, in my mind, has less to do with the degree or these kinds of traditional things that we might associate that with, but more about the breadth of knowledge, the depth of knowledge, and the facility therein.
That makes so much sense. So you're thinking like, it's. So when I think of scholarly, I always think, you got all these advanced degrees, but you can't like work a remote control. You know what I mean? Like, And so I love how you're saying that. It's just like, your experience allows you, your scholarly experience or dedication to learning or mastering this skill set is what creates a deeper understanding of it, which increases your capacity and aptitude for it in a more practical sense. So I like that. That sounds really good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Do you think it's more valuable to, to be... which one do you think is more valuable? I'll put it that way. Having a skill set or the capacity to do X and create X result for a company or for yourself? Or do you think it's more valuable to be a true scholar or student of your craft and be able to operate on a much deeper level in whatever field that may be? Especially as it pertains to students, because I'm sure you see some students who have a lot of capacity, right? May not be the deepest thinker, but they have a lot of capacity for it. And then you have others who probably are very, very advanced, but it's probably going to be difficult for them to find something that suits them because of how in depth they are into this thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I look at when I look at students, I think that there are those that, they're eager and they want to know how to do the thing. Teach me how to do this, or when I encounter this problem, how do I fix that? In my case, I work a lot in recording studios. So how do I record this? And, these kinds of things where they just have this insatiable appetite for this development of skill set, so they can do all of these things, which is wonderful. And you need that. That's a vital step. And that's required to be successful, in any job or career for that matter. The students that I would define a little bit more scholarly are the ones that, okay, well, how does this work? Why does it work that way? How does the energy flow? How does the, electromagnetic response, these things where there's just this, they're captivated maybe by the activity, but what's really interesting to them is like, how does it work? Why does it work? It's kind of like, why is the sky blue? Well, because it's like, well, why is that? And it's just that curiosity that keeps pushing them forward. So that's how I would probably separate those out in my mind a little bit based on what I see with students in the classroom.
What do you think the biggest challenges is for those different types of students, different type of people? Because we can get really into the minutia, right? The fine detail of something, but ultimately be not really a doer, right? For myself, sometimes I can get paralyzed by all the details. I like processes, right? I like to create things that have steps. I like teaching things that have steps. I like laying out processes in order to get a certain result, like a recipe, you know what I mean? I like to line up all the ingredients and the measurements on the counter and be like, voila, this is what you do, But at the same time, there are some people who can just create incredible things because they are so absorbed with the fine detail. What are the challenges you see in your students, and even just that you've noticed in your career from these two different types of approaches to work?
So I think when you're talking about skill set, I think the challenge is, I've never liked that adage, just slipped my mind. Jack of all trades, master of none. I've always felt that clearly came from somebody who does not work in a creative field. And I say that in a sense because there's so many different aspects that call upon different segments of the brain to do things. If you're a freelancer, or maybe not even just in the arts, but you're a freelancer, you're responsible for the creation of the art, the development with the client, plus the management and all these other kinds of things. So it's a lot that's spread out there. And so I think that the challenge on the aspect of just developing skill set is knowing, do I have enough? Do I know enough to do the thing? And do I just have to keep doing all these other kinds of things? Just this this fear of not knowing enough or not having enough skill sets to do the objective, I think, and where you're just chasing after things. You know, and I say that even just from my own perspective, like my own self. Like there's so many kinds of things where, you know, years ago I worked in the computer science field, and I worked as a developer, and it's been many years since I've done any developing code-wise outside of some basic scripting or something. But every now and then I get this feeling of like, oh man, I should dive back in and like, you know, explore some of these other programming languages and things like this. But really, like, you know, I don't think that there's the time, but there's a feeling of I should do that I need to do that. So there's that. So I think that that's a thing. So I think that just that feeling of, you know, when do I know that I've acquired the skill sets to do what I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
Always just more pulling at your attention.
Yeah.
In the case of Scholar, I think it starts to ride on the side of, you know, how deep do you go? And at what point, you know, to the end of, I mean, the thing that we haven't really talked about is, you know, this could apply to hobbies, this could apply to careers, but you know, if we're talking about just jobs and making a living and stuff like this, it also, you know, the complementary good to this is, well, is this able to be monetized? Are people able to pay you for this service or for your skill set or for your knowledge? And so I think the other side of it, where on the scholarly side, is it's at some point, are you so, like you use the word minutia, are you so invested in that discovery that maybe that's not giving you the results that you want either? You know, maybe you're finding that person that's able to compensate you in a way, you know, and again, only, you know, just looking at it from an occupational standpoint, that can be a challenge as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point you make too, because, you know, ultimately, you know, what, regardless of what it is you really care about doing or that you're very much into, ultimately you're going to want to make a living doing this. And so you really have to be mindful of the amount of time you spend in the weeds, so to speak, right? The amount of time you spend just like obsessing over the finest details. Because, you know, what I've realized in production is that most people don't see what you see. They just don't. They've sat with the end product for probably about, you know, 2 hours, maybe, you know, maybe something like that. Whereas you've spent weeks and weeks obsessing over how this looks. They're not going to be able to capture all of the time and investment that you have spent on this thing. And so there is, I agree with you, there's this fine balance of knowing when enough is enough. When, you know, it's like, so for instance, like when I launched my coaching service, where I teach other people how to create podcasts for their business and things like that, I was obsessing over all the different processes and everything that could go wrong and all the things I need to know and all this other kind of stuff. And I realized they're just buying the results, right? They want you to build the thing. They don't necessarily care about all the other stuff, you know? And if that stuff is something that they have a question about, you're more than capable of giving them those answers. Whatever is going to be useful to your client, to the end goal of whatever your skill set or that's what I tend to focus on, because I can be, you know, obsessing over perfection forever. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm sure you've had projects where you like, I did all this work, and then you show it to the client and they're just like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. But I will say this, just because the artist side of me, like, it would be dying inside just to let that rest like that. But I mean, that also I think is what makes us good creators, you know? I mean, that just makes us the quirky individuals that we are, you know? I mean, no matter what, we still will obsess, you know? And whether it's a deadline or that's when the check comes, you know, that might be the determining factor when it's over. I mean, that's the reality. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know what I'm saying to that outside of the fact that, you know, those obsessions drive us in a unique way that I think is important. And that struggle, though we all don't like it, and it's uncomfortable, is an important step. And we wouldn't create the same way if it didn't exist.
Right, absolutely. What's been one of the biggest challenges you've had as you've developed your skill set, of that balance, that, of knowing when is enough, when is, like, okay, let this go, just let's move on. You know what I mean? Like, what was the biggest challenge for you? Because I mean, at this point, you've got all these incredible certifications, which I'm gonna have you list some of them, just because I need you guys to understand the level of understanding that Miles has with his craft. It's really, really inspiring. But first, we'll answer this question. Like, what was some of your biggest challenges with that? Where did you have to like pull yourself in a corner and like, we're gonna do it this way. We have to focus.
Okay. I think I have a couple thoughts about that. One is my biggest challenge is still something I deal with every day. Like it doesn't matter what it is, but anytime I send something, particularly like that first whatever to a client, it doesn't matter how good you are. And it's weird. Like sometimes, you're working with somebody that, has come to you and they're like, I absolutely love the work that you do. And they have like, you're just inundated with these wonderful accolades, and they're just so excited to work with you. And it doesn't even matter. But in that situation, when you send something to the client, you're just holding your breath.
Absolutely.
And it's always just you're sweating when you send it off because you don't want, obviously, you've invested some of yourself in no matter what it is. And so you're always sweating, are they going to like this or whatever? But that is still the hardest thing. And it never gets easier. And so one, I think that's the hardest thing that I feel you still encounter. And I think that, again, as you're learning and developing, in which we all are, and we're always students of our craft, that doesn't go away. And I think that there's this false expectation that at some point you kind of reach this level. And I don't know that it does. And if in some cases, I almost wonder if that roller coaster even becomes more violent when there's higher stakes. So, I mean, but the other side of that is how you take criticism. And when you're dealing with creation, you are dealing with your own emotions and other people's emotions, and we all communicate differently. And text messages and emails, as we know, are probably not the best way to get creative ideas across.
Yeah.
But pure convenient for communicating. And as a result, oftentimes we can really feel crushed by, I can send something off and I get an emoji that's like a thumbs up or a thanks. And I don't know what that means. I don't mean, do you like it? Do you hate it? Does this mean everybody has to listen to it and they've got to evaluate? Am I going to get 3 pages of notes back? I don't know what that means. Whereas, I've gotten critique back that was very lengthy and I interpreted it one way and I completely felt destroyed over it. And come to find out, that was maybe that's what they meant, but in other situations, it wasn't what they meant. And I was completely beating myself up over it. My confidence is shaken. And it just came down to the fact that just that communication as far as how we, just how we communicate that way. And so I think that that's the other aspect that's challenging is how you deal with that criticism and how you incorporate that and then either improve upon or whatever the case might be.
Handling criticism is we may have to do a whole segment on that, man. Handling criticism is an entirely different beast because it is when I agree with that so much. Every time I put out a new podcast, I feel some kind of way. I'll be like, oh, this is gonna be the one that flops. Here we go. And it's and so when you say like you feel like the better things get, the more violent the roller coaster. I'm like, oh God, that sounds rough. But it's also an honor to do it and to continue to make yourself vulnerable enough to put things out into the world, whether they're for your clients or for yourself. Some people can't do that. They can't even manufacture the authenticity to create things. And it's a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Well, I heard this the other day and it really resonates with me. It's that, success is success is being able to do the same thing the next day, and that really resonates with me in this industry. And, this is way off topic, but, just on that idea of criticism, there was a project that I worked on, I was very proud of, typical pour your heart and soul into, and I sent it to the client. And it was one of those things that through the conversation leading up to this, I had no indication that I was off base on anything. And I sent it off, and it's one of those things where a week goes by and you're not hearing anything and you're waiting. And I get this email back, and it's a good, I don't know, it's 2 pages or 1 page, but small type, but it fills a page. And it was, one of these instances I was mentioning where you feel pretty crushed. And it really rattled me because it was, identifying the things that had not met the expectation of this significant individual. And it just, but again, like taking the big step back is realizing this is their baby, like this is something they're going to live with forever. Like this is their work that I'm being invited to manipulate and enhance or refine or capture. And so, for them, they've got, in a case of a musician, they've got to go out on the road and tour with this for the next several years or a year or something, where for me, I will put my same heart and soul into everything, but I'm going to, next, when that's done, I'm moving on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so, you kind of got to understand where everyone's coming from. But long story short is I got this email and it just hurt. And I have it printed off and I have it laminated and I have it in a shelf right where I do a lot of work. And it's a reminder for me, particularly when I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Just, it's just a good reminder that, how you take that criticism and how that helps build you to be a better whatever.
Yeah.
And so that's been one way personally that I felt, I've tried to make myself better handling criticism, is that constant reminder of a situation that was not super pleasant.
Thanks for listening to Empower You Podcast. I want to take a second and tell you about a service I've been using that has literally changed my life. Aikita Ricks, the founder of SawYourScore.com, helped me erase negative items on my credit score, provided me a clear path to improving my credit, and raised my score by 100 points in the first 90 days. Like, whoa. The best part about all of this is all I had to do was follow instructions. Now, if you're like me and you need a credit bestie, you need to click the link below and schedule your absolutely free discovery call today. Tell them Kid Boy sent you. Yeah, that sounds rough, man. I stopped doing certain kinds of work because I don't think it was so much just the criticism as much as I think sometimes people don't really know what they want. And so you can get caught in this cycle of constantly doing for them, and they're never really happy. And it's not because you didn't bend over backwards. It's because they weren't really sure to begin with, and they're still trying to figure it out while you're constantly changing things. So it's kind of like, and that's when I learned to have contracts with the number of hours in them.
Yeah.
So that everybody understands we're going to spend a certain amount of hours on this, and we're going to refine it as best as we can. So that gives them the incentive to get their vision a little bit more clear. And then also to know that, like, we're not going to do this for forever. The contract is for X amount of hours, and we've already elapsed some of that. I'm happy to help you out with the next X amount of hours, but after that, like, we're not going to keep going back and forth about this. You know what I mean?
Totally.
I learned that early because, again, skill sets. That's how I approached the working world. I was like, okay, well, I can do this, I can do that. So I need to find income. I need to find jobs and opportunities that help me capitalize on these skill sets. Do you feel like any of your students, or do you feel like at some point you were very tentative to step out and say, this is my skill set, this is what I can do, this is what I provide? what are the barriers for that?
I think it really comes down to confidence. Some individuals seem to get a really nice ramp, headed where they're at, and where there's some gradual steps that make that, launch into, we'll say, professional sector. I won't say easier, but a little bit more expected. It's a little bit more calculated. There are others where it's just boom, the doors are open and now I'm ready to roll. And so I think it just comes down to confidence, because you can always, it's one thing to just sit and create and do, but if it's intended to just be for you, and that's fine, and it's not meant to be shared outside of that, then that's fine. But if it's something that you want to be pursuing and you want to make a career or whatever, it's got to be recognized, it's got to be visible, it's got to be experienced. And so in those cases, that's just that, it's those steps of confidence. And there are definite things that I have plenty of confidence in doing, but I still have a lot of apprehension or nerves about when it comes time to do that. And it's just being able to manage those things.
Yeah. So first, tell me about the different certifications that you have. I have a question I want to ask you, but I really want to hear about the different certifications that you have, and how you have really maximized the original skill set, right, that you came out of school with, and to be where you are now.
So certifications like degrees and this and that and all those things.
Absolutely, your scholarly journey.
My scholarly journey. So academic. So I have a master's in music technology, which involves an advanced certificate in Tonmeister studies, which is an academic terminal degree that's very unique, dealing with being essentially a record producer and recording and mixing sound. And I have a degree, an associate's degree in computer science. I have a bachelor's degree in digital media. As far as professional certifications, I'm an avid learning partner. So I teach some industry software that allows me to teach and give professional certificates to others to conduct that kind of training. There's many different software and technologies that offer different certifications and things like that I have achieved as well. So it's just, I love what I do in my industry, and I'm always interested in really feeling confident. Again, having that confidence and understanding the technology, because ultimately that will influence how I use that with clients and projects and creative pursuits.
Yeah, that's amazing. What part of that makes you the most nervous?
The most nervous?
Yeah.
As far as
I think
just like you things, or
yeah, like so as I'll only speak for myself. As I get better and I can see myself visibly getting better, there are still aspects of my journey that you just still get, the sweaty armpits about, and I think for students, and then just for anybody who's listening, no matter where you are on your journey, there are areas that you're just nervous about. You can have all the proof in the world that this is okay and that you're doing a great job, but they just always create this anxiety for you. And I think that's normal. I want to think that's normal, right? That's what I go through. So I'm like, oh, everybody's doing it, But, what is that for you?
Oh, man. It's so many thoughts. Yeah. I experienced the same things. I think, it sounds cliche, but, the more you know, the more you grow. There's that ever increasing feeling that, man, are they going to realize I'm a fraud, that I don't know what I'm doing? And, I think that that is a real fear. And that's the way I feel. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing is, I grow and develop in certain areas, but there's this, it just exposes you to so many more things that you don't know. And again, you're like, oh, maybe these are other things I got to learn and develop. And it's wonderful. But the result is that, I think it increases that feeling that you're a fraud.
Yeah, because there's always another level of understanding, I think that's really, really interesting that especially, and this is significant for me because I see you as one of the ultimate experts that I know in regards to audio, in regards to a lot of things production wise and everything like that, so when I have a significant question and we've had different conversations about the industry stuff as well. And so to think that at any point, even with all the expertise that you have, you're still like, man, like I'm still just trying to make sure I'm on my toes here. I think that's really interesting. And I think it's a great place to be. I'm learning that that's the place to occupy, because that's where your genuine creativity is, right? Your genuine desire to do a good job. It doesn't reside in, your ego. It resides in your authenticity, which could present itself as anxiety or worry or, whatever that is. So I think that's really, really cool. I don't know anybody else in the city who does as many things as you do in this capacity. And don't you have like a seat at the Grammys or something like that? Did I hear this?
Oh, well, I'm a voting member in the Recording Academy. So, what you see is the Grammys every year. I vote in those selections and have submitted work and different things like that.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing.
I mean, it's wonderful. And again, it's just that whole, for me, it's just that spirit of collaboration, it's being able to work with so many great different kinds of people.
Oh yeah.
That's the best part.
Oh yeah, for sure. So for people who are like, okay, so like, what do I do now? Like, okay, I understand I need to be active, right? And do the thing and exercise the skill set. But then I also need to be mindful that there's always more to learn. So I should always be studying my craft. Like, what's the one big takeaway you want them to have, especially for our students and people who are going to listen to this and be like, hey, I want to do this or I want to do that. Like, what's the biggest takeaway you think they need to have from this episode, but then even as a way to think about what they're doing? Because you can get caught up going to class, checking all the boxes, showing up, trying to get good grades, but you haven't really put together your big picture. You may say you did, but on an everyday level, you just trying to get through it, just trying not to fail. There was some of that for me. I was like, y'all, I'm just trying to get through this. Like, I work 60 hours a week. I have 18 credit hours. I'm just really trying not to fail all these classes. I spent too much money on this education for me to fail these classes.
Yep.
So what would be the big takeaway would you want them to have?
The gains are different. There are some things that you experience that you visibly notice. I went from point A to point B. I am more skilled. I am more capable. I'm more skill set, more scholarly, whatever, however you want to call it. You see those big leaps. What you don't see, and what I don't think we celebrate, is we don't celebrate the little things. And through an academic career, to your point, you don't, the day in, the day out, we don't, there's nothing glorious about that particularly, that daily grind. But when you look back over the course of, in your case, getting a degree or graduating or whatever people are studying, all those little things add up to something. And as myself, being an extremely impatient person, I get frustrated with myself in the same capacity because I don't see that. And it's usually not until I've gone down the road far enough that I realize, wow, look at all of these little things. And I realize in such a bigger picture how that has developed. And I think that we don't we don't celebrate the little things. And we just have to know and understand that many of these big accomplishments or the goals and the aspirations that we have are truly built on those little things. And we're always looking for that next, big block. It's like, okay, so I've done this, and then I can get another big block, and I do this. And after I've got 10 of these, I've reached this goal. But I don't know. In my experience, it doesn't work that way. It's a block and a pile of sand, and then maybe another concrete slab. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't feel as methodical that way. And I think that that's the big takeaway for me as I think about these things, is just that recognition, and in many cases, just that celebration of what those little things are, because they definitely shape and refine us.
Yeah, that's really great, man. That's really great. I'm also incredibly impatient. Every day I feel like could be the last, so I just try to go as hard as I can every day, which can be a bit of a problem, but that's a different story. But I hear you, man, because it's non-linear, and that's what I feel like is the frustrating part about the doctrine that we get from society, right? It's you do this, and then this happens, and then you do that, and then that it's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not. None of that is guaranteed. Maybe in somebody's textbook it is, but the reality is that's not necessarily how it goes, And so the whole idea of it's like, oh, it's brick by brick. It's like, well, actually, there's a lot of other things in between one brick and the next, and I think that's great. I think that's great, man. Thank you so much for pouring into us today. If you all are listening and you're finding some value in this, I want you to go to the University of St. Francis, Fort Wayne, Facebook page, Instagram, and drop a thank you, drop a like, subscribe, follow. They're putting out a lot of really great content. They got some folks over in their marketing department that are really doing an amazing job. And so I want you to go and say thank you. You can also find Miles on Facebook. You probably didn't want everybody to know your Facebook, but it is Miles Fulwider on Facebook. He's an incredibly talented guy. And so drop him a thank you, send him a friend request. Tell him you're into audio, if you're into audio. If not, tell him you're into landscaping. So listen, before we wrap up, we always do a thought exercise at the end of every episode. And so I'm inviting you, if you have something for us, would you like to do a thought exercise with us? It's just something personal that you do to get yourself through maybe a difficult time, or to motivate yourself when you feel like you're in that weird in between one brick and the next, where you're just you feel like you started something, now you're just in a pause, you're waiting for another piece to present itself so you can finish what you were doing. If there's something that you do or that you would advise other people do, whether they're students or just anyone who's listening, I would love to hear a thought exercise from you.
So I was thinking about this, and I know we had talked a little bit just about the overarching theme of just education.
Yeah.
And what education is. And, I teach, I work in a, pretty formulated academic situation, but as we both know, and it's pretty clear, education looks like a lot of different things. And I was thinking about this, and I think even particularly just over the last couple of years that I think that are interesting is, this is might be a little bit more off topic, but, thinking about education as a whole. And something that stuck out to me was I really view education in how we internalize information. So I have the ability that I can find information that is 100% aligns with what I think and like and whatever. I mean, that's the beauty of so much information and the capacity to locate and find those things. But something that I've been doing with myself lately is, particularly as I'm an emotional person. I think I probably react emotionally. And an exercise I've been trying to do is when I react to something, I try to think back, what does my education tell me? What does my experience tell me? Like, now I've been barraged with this information. Maybe it's a news headline or a news story. And sometimes we just instantly react, or we form these real big opinions about things. But when you reflect on it a little bit, like, what does my experience tell me? What is my life experience? We all have very important and very unique life experiences. And I think that sometimes gets just overshadowed by just that reactionary thing. And I think being able to take that education, whatever education we have, really informs how we take information in and how we form our opinions and our judgments and our thought processes. And so something I've been trying to do is I take, when I respond to something very quickly or have a strong reaction to it, I try to dissect it a little bit and just say, well, what is my life experience? That gut instinct that we have, like, where does that fall on this? Am I just throwing that sort of thing out? I'm just being emotional about something. So that's been a bit of the exercise I've been doing with myself lately, is just how, relying on those experiences, because I think that informs how I take in information and react accordingly.
Yeah, that's really great. I love how you are interchanging your life experience, your lived experience, with your education. I think that's really, really important. And I think we disregard our lived experience as being just that. Like, oh, well, that's just how I grew up. It's like, but that's the first environment that educated you on however you feel. And so I love that you're saying, like, check in with all of that. Not only just, what you know from a data perspective, but what you know to be true about yourself and what you have experienced, not just taking on the feeling or the energy of a headline or a topic or a very opinionated person, depending on where you're at, like, I think that's really, really amazing. And it's so subtle, right? Because the switch happens so fast. Like, you don't even notice. All of a sudden, you kind of mad now, man. Like, are you good? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why am I upset all of a sudden? I think that's amazing, man. Thank you for that. Especially, like, with all the things that are going on in the world right now, man. It's very, very easy to become absorbed in everyone else's energy and not really check in with what is true for you. So that's super helpful. That's super helpful, man. Thank you. All right, y'all. Y'all got your homework, right? Check in. Check in with your own education, your own lived experience, before you just make emotional decisions or just have emotional thoughts or speak things over yourself, even based off of just what's happening. Because we're human, right? And everything changes from moment to moment to moment. Thank you for that. That's awesome. That's very good for me, especially today. Today was one of those days, man. Today was one of those days. I was like, whew. I gotta recenter myself.
I get it, man. I'm with you.
Yeah, man. It's gloomy outside. If you guys are in Indiana, it's been raining all day. It's like not fun at all. So listen, how can people engage with St. Francis? How can people get their students involved with the music technology program? How can people reach out to you and say thank you, or in any way participate in the things that the university is doing?
Yeah, so me personally, I'm very accessible. As you mentioned, Facebook and Instagram. It's Miles Fulwider. I'm pretty easy to find along those lines. As far as the University of St. Francis, going to our webpage, there's contact information there. We do a lot of really fun high school workshops and summer camps and other just programming throughout the year. We have performances, different things. We do a lot of, I don't know. I like people just to reach out and be like, hey, I got a crazy idea, ... And, there's lots of really fun things that we do with our students, with our program, just based on a lot of those things. So I would just say reach out and let's have a conversation.
I love it. I love it. Y'all got your marching orders. You have your thought exercise. It's time to go execute. We're gonna ruminate in what we've learned today about what it means to be a scholar and to use your skill set. I'm a skill set guy, but I'm learning that it is in the minutia. It is in the constant learning of your craft that you really become a master of what you're doing, and that does take a level of scholarly exercise, right? I'm not super big on all the degrees. I don't know, man. That's difficult.
Oh, that's only one avenue, man.
Right.
There's countless others. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, y'all, thank you so much for listening. I'm really enjoying this series already. I think it's so applicable for the state that we're at, just, in the United States, in the world. We have to reframe our understanding of what we're doing, because if we just keep on going and we negate our lived experiences, like you said, we're just engaging in one emotional decision after the other without any real rhyme or reason. So I'm having a great time with this series already, and I really appreciate you coming in and spending some of your time with us, man.
My pleasure. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely. So if all of you all go ahead, like, subscribe, follow, share this with a friend of yours. And if you are like myself or Miles and you have an expertise and you have something that you really want to share, you have a program, or you're a coach or a consultant and you have some kind of solution for an ideal client and you're looking to create your very own podcast, I want you to reach out to me. www.empoweryoupodcast.com is my website. You can reach me at empoweryoupodcast@gmail.com. Reach out to me and let's talk. Let's figure this out, because your information, your skill set, your expertise is valuable. And if you're super interested, you can go to Work with Kid Boy Cooper, and you'll get a free case study where I'll show you some of the things that I do that'll help you move forward. Okay, that's all free. You don't have to do anything. It's just a way of me giving back to you some of my skill set, some of my expertise in order to help you out. Okay, all right. So listen. Thank you again, man. I will talk to you super soon. To everybody listening to Empower You Podcast, thank you, and I'll see you in another episode. Peace. Empower You Podcast is devoted to bringing real-world wisdom and encouragement to our listeners. We discuss a multitude of life principles and the process from an economic, cultural, and societal perspective. We believe that through tough conversations and shared wisdom, we can pave the path and leave a ladder for the future. Subscribe to our channel and let us empower you.